By their fruit you will know them. A good tree will give forth good fruit. A bad tree will give forth bad fruit. We have to understand that civilizations and cultures are based upon a system of beliefs. So we're going to look tonight at a couple of individuals out of this London attack. We're going to take a look at what kind of culture, what kind of man Islam produces, and what kind of culture and man the Lord Jesus Christ produces. So we're going to take a look at a gleeful terrorist and the Christian hero, a reluctant hero who stopped him. Now, we've got other attacks that are happening today because, of course, it is Ramadan, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Islam, right? Except that during Ramadan, we have seen just a week ago in Baghdad, we had dozens of people killed with bombings in Iraq. We had in the Muslim Philippines a massive outbreak of terrorism that looks like Syria. Entire towns are being fought for. We have martial law that is still in effect there. And now in Australia, we have a gunman taking hostages, telling the station, this is for ISIS. He took a woman hostage. He is suspected of killing another man. He called up a TV newsroom during the siege to claim, this is for IS, this is for Al-Qaeda, this is for Allah, folks. This is what the terrorist said last week. And you know, even before we knew those kinds of details, as soon as I heard this, I tweeted out unconfirmed reports. We got a car that's driven into a crowd, I said at the time. I said 3 men jumped out. It's what we're hearing at the moment. And this is as it first happened. Jumped out with knives or slitting throats. They stabbed a girl in the chest and so forth. I said, religion of peace, because that's what we always hear. And I had somebody come back and say, very Christian of you. What would Jesus say? And I said, well, try reading what Jesus said and did. He whipped the bankers. These are the same guys that are starting the wars, that are bringing in the terrorists today. She said, I was brought up on Christianity, and I don't recognize any of your beliefs. And I said, and then she said, try thinking for yourself and stop relying on ancient texts. Well, she doesn't understand it, but those ancient texts are the foundations of societies, of cultures, of civilizations. And if you don't understand the foundations of the Islamic culture and beliefs, if you don't understand that our pluralistic society, our tolerant society, is truly based on Christianity, then you're going to lose something very valuable. You know, the entire worldwide caliphate that doesn't exist, but that the Muslims are trying to create, the fact that it doesn't exist is an affront to the truth, to the falsity of their religion. You know, we had one of the other things that Jesus said about the good fruit, the bad fruit. He also said, beware of false prophets who come dressed in sheep clothing, but inside they are ravaging wolves. And that's precisely what we see with this individual. This is a guy, 27-year-old Karam Shahzad Butt, who came to Britain as a child when his parents were looking for asylum from Pakistan because their religion and the foundation of that society was tearing it apart. So he came as the son of a refugee. And one woman, as we have on the InfoWars report from Paul Joseph Watson, one woman who didn't want to be named, of course, because why? There would be recriminations from the religion of peace. Do not offend them. They will kill you. She said she stared angrily whenever he saw women cycling on the estate, bicycling on the area. She described him as sinister and sexist. Well, maybe that's why this coward stabbed multiple women in the chest, slit their throats. He didn't just hate women. He hates anybody who does not subscribe to his false religion. And as Watson goes on to point out, the same documentary that he was featured in, and this is the key, folks, that the British government knew they were there. The British television station, BBC, Channel 4, did a documentary, The Jihadis Next Door. They featured that last year. He was featured in that. And as part of that, you see this guy unfurling a flag of ISIS in a park, all of these guys worshiping that flag of ISIS, that cult of death. What did the police do? Nothing. They had an altercation. Maybe they had some harsh words. Oh, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? And yet they did nothing. They allowed this guy to be there. So he flew his flag. They documented that he was a terrorist, and they allowed him to stay. They didn't jail him. They didn't deport him. And now people have died. There they are. Butts in the air. And that's his name, actually, is Butt. Nevertheless, when asked if he supports ISIS, the man responded, no comment in the documentary, before subsequently admitting that he would be arrested if he answered the question properly. And Watson finishes by saying, the fact is that at the bare minimum, there are 3,000 such individuals roaming the UK who will never be arrested or deported for their jihadist views because Britain is a country where being politically correct is deemed to be more important than stopping terrorism. And so what do we know about this guy? As I said before, he's a gleeful terrorist, engaged in his religion, his cult of death, about to do the consummate act, mass murder. And this is what we see from the neighbors. He was such a nice guy. I put a report out while we were in Bilderberg. Mainstream media on terrorists, he was such a nice guy, especially nice on the day that he performed his final rituals of mass murder. And this is what one of the people who lived close to him said. I knew he lectured people on the Quran, they said. And there were always people dressed in robes coming in and out of his apartment. He was always nice. But yesterday, he was an entirely different level of niceness. He was so happy. He had a barbecue, perhaps not the kind of North Carolina pulled pork that we have, but he had a barbecue. He was celebrating this religious ceremony, a mass murder for his false god, Allah. He's, of course, he's embarking. He says, last week he called for a barbecue and he invited all of us. It was a celebration. Now, I want to contrast this guy who is so gleeful, who is holding a celebratory barbecue as he's going to go out and murder innocent people. As these guys, as I'm going to show you right here, eyewitness reports how they teamed up on unarmed women, stabbing them repeatedly. These monsters. This is the bad fruit of Islam, the bad fruit of a false prophet, Muhammad. He said, this is an individual. This is Ozzy. They only identify him. Why? Don't they give him his last name? Well, because he would probably be hunted down by the religion of peace and executed. So they only give his first name. He's a doorman, and he is the reluctant hero. He works at the Wheat Sheaf pub in Borough Market, and they say he led a brave charge. This is the Sun, UK, a brave charge against the maniacs despite fearing that they had suicide bomb vests after seeing them repeatedly knifing a woman. A close friend said he was with his 7-year-old son yesterday, and the kid's mom told him, your dad's a hero. He saved people's lives last night. And his son said, they said, we didn't want to give him too much information. He's too young to really understand this. And the son said, my dad is always a hero. Why is he a hero? Who has been following? Who has informed his beliefs? What has formed his character? Christ. Christ has formed his character. We'll see that in a minute. But what did he hear there from these followers of Islam, these followers of Muhammad? He said, I heard a serious amount of screaming and commotion coming from the street. Me and a few of the doormen went to see what had happened. We saw 3 guys in camouflage trousers stabbing this woman. They were all surrounding her, knifing her repeatedly. Why? What had she done to them? What had she done to them? Nothing. About 10 times, he said. Then suddenly they looked up and they started running toward other individuals. And they say Ozzy is understood to be a Pentecostal Christian. He initially fled before doubling back. He said, I realized that I had to do something. If I hadn't turned back, there would have been so many people caught up in the panic, there would have been more hurt. Well, why did he do this? I think the key to this is to understand the difference in the way Christians and Muslims use the word martyr. Martyr is a Greek word. It means witness. The early Christians were witnesses to Christ, to the miracles, to the life that he had led. They refused to recant. They were executed by the Romans, and they would not refuse. They would not recant what they had seen. They were witnesses. That was the most important thing to them. Martyrs, witnesses. They were willing to die rather than to deny what they had seen. But the Muslims come along and they co-opt that. They said, oh, martyr, that's death. Oh, we can use that. So martyrs in Islam are people who kill others and kill themselves. You see the difference, the key difference. The difference is that this Christian martyr, the guy who was willing to lay down his life because he had seen Christ lay down his life for him. That's the difference. Defending innocent life. That's the difference between Christianity and Islam. He said, me and another guy started launching bar stools, bottles, glasses at them to try to disrupt them. It was completely chaotic, like a war zone. They ran through the barrage, we deflected them, and they literally ran straight into the cops who shot them. Who shot them? That's the way it stopped. With good men, armed with guns. That's why we need to have an armed citizenry. We'll get to that in a moment. But then, of course, CNN comes to the rescue, defending this religion, this cult of death, trying to put it out there as a religion of peace. And, of course, we had earlier today on the Alex Jones radio show, we talked to the individual who filmed the fake CNN rescue of Islam's reputation. What they did was and I tweeted this out, I said, here's how CNN fake news works. You call central casting, you get some Muslim women, you position them carefully for a photo op, and then you cue the scripted narrative. And now they're coming back and saying, well, they really were there because they wanted to oppose what had happened. We just happened to give them the signs. We switched out the police. We let them through the police line. We did everything. We set this up, staged it completely. You can see them as they're doing that. CNN reporter, as Paul Joseph Watson points out, organized and directed a group of Muslims holding anti-terror signs the day after Islamic terrorists killed 7, injured nearly 50 in London. And he says, why CNN's denial that they staged a Muslim anti-terror protest is total BS. He points out the police allowed demonstrators through the cordon so they could show their signs to the media. They took out the real cops, they put in community cops. And here's what Watson says. He says, can you imagine any other scenario outside of CNN wanting to push a narrative that they would behave like this? If Tommy Robinson, a guy who's well known in the UK for opposing Sharia law, if he were to stage a protest after a massive London terror attack, would the police let him through a cordon? Would the Muslim officers be placed alongside him to make sure that his message looked authentic and pluralistic and multicultural? No, they wouldn't. Would CNN reporters carefully shepherd other protesters into a neat formation so they could get the best shot? Of course not. None of this would happen. CNN wouldn't even cover an anti-Sharia protest because it doesn't fit their agenda that Islam is a religion of peace. So I had some people tweet me back and say, well, shouldn't this be illegal? No, it shouldn't be illegal. But we should understand that CNN has a legal right to make fictional films. The public just needs to know that it's not news. Maybe they should put something at the bottom of the beginning of their news to say this is based on a true story, but not exactly true, because that's really what's going on.
We've taken thousands of years of known research and put it together with our own 4 years of seeking and testing to find the very best systems that God gave us through Mother Nature to detoxify the body. That's why I'm introducing Z-Shield, Toxic Metal and Chemical Defense Support. It's made in the USA. It's filled with known compounds from nature that are absolutely associated with detoxifying the body, and it supports the InfoWar. It is a classical 360 win. Our formula at InfoWarsLife.com is, quite frankly, simple. We go out and look at the recognized research, and we take it to the next level of quality, of purity, and of strength. Because this is what I personally use for myself and my family. We've gone through 5 or 6 different permutations in the last 4 years since we launched InfoWars Life to actually come up with this. This is the formula that I personally have been taking for over a year, and now we believe we have come as close to perfection when it comes to a detoxifier as you can possibly get. If you're not mitigating the pesticides, the heavy metals, the chemicals, if you're not trying to purify your water, if you're not trying to take products like Z-Shield, that are full of known concentrated compounds that help purify our cells and our bodies, you're crazy. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, and you owe it to the future of this country and the world that patriots stay as healthy and as clean and as focused as you can be, because we need you, the remnant of America, to reignite those brush fires to the next level and to be healthy and as focused as you can be. Because if you're sick, if you're over there on the sidelines and not in the fight, you're basically giving in to the New World Order. Thanks to your support and your prayers, together, we're changing the world. Now it's time to change our bodies with Z-Shield at InfoWarsLife.com.